Hello and welcome to the Royal Beat Collection with me, Russell Myers. In this show, we'll take you to the heart of royal matters, ably assisted by royal experts in the know. On this episode, with President Macron's state visit just days away, we're looking at how King Charles has navigated politics and diplomacy that comes with these international events.
This is the first state visit of King Charles III's reign and the first state visit to be held in the UK since Donald Trump rolled into town in 2019. And I think it's safe to say that the palace pulled out all the stops to provide a royal welcome this week. Here we have the horses being prepared for the official state coach for the carriage procession. This is the national flower of South Africa, the protea. Yeah, and it's being replicated out of sugar and carefully hand-painted, ready for the president to dine with the King and Queen Consort. Wesley, how will the history books remember this one?
All the King's horses and all the King's men. And what I thought standing on the Mall that day was there was no diminution of ceremony. People that said, oh, it'll be slimmed down. The grand bits of the monarchy, I think, are still in place. Quite decent crowds on the Mall and a very, very happy feeling. So there was a day of ceremonial at the palace at the Westminster Abbey and then a visit to Kew the next day and the City of London. Yeah. But it was a scale down in that sense.
But I also noticed at the banquet that it was much less flamboyant than when the Queen gave state banquets. There were less flowers, no huge bowls of fruit, because this is very Charles. Let's be green. Let's get all the flowers from the hothouses at Windsor and Sandringham, and let's just use what we've got. So I noticed that particularly. I think it looked quite different.
As much as this is him and the Queen Consort setting out their stall, there's a genuine reason for these state visits. They are encouraged by the government to hold them, and this is where we start to see them exerting their soft power. So our relationship with South Africa is long, as the Queen had an extraordinary tie with the country and one of its most memorable leaders.
As does the King.
As does the King, yeah.
And he said in both in his speech, he kicked it off by commenting, of course, about the Queen and Nelson Mandela's famous relationship, referring to each other on first-name terms, something that's sort of transcended the ages. And indeed, Charles has been to South Africa many times and met Mandela and was able to draw on those anecdotes.
Let's look at how he opened the speech.
President Ramaphosa, welcome. Evsheni, Dumela, Suabona, Molo, Molweni, Nda.
Wow.
This is almost Prince of Wales behaviour as opposed to King Charles behaviour, would you say?
Charles has this wonderful delivery. I mean, I always think he's like a sort of Shakespearean actor. He really knows how to give a speech. And I think that he always speaks with huge affection, A, about his wife, my darling wife, and B, about his late mother. He makes it
a great orator.
He makes it sing. He really does. And I think that was a wonderful delivery and a wonderful speech.
Is this the kind of reception that they would expect when they're carrying out a state visit, Matt?
It really had a bit of glamour, a bit of glitter, a bit of excitement. You had the Macrons, you had red carpets, you had Arc de Triomphe, you had everything that a state visit should be. Visually, it was fantastic. The speeches
kind of won the room. Well, there were some great moments. Let's take a look through some of his finest, shall we?
Monsieur le Président, dans tout cela, nous pouvons compter sur notre solide amitié, qui se renouvelle et se redynamise à chaque nouvelle génération.
Very well done. I mean, he spoke as well extensively about the relationship between France and the UK, saying that the connections between our people are myriad and represent the lifeblood of our history, which was inspired by my great-great-grandfather, King Edward VII. So he really was reaching back across the history books, but also managed to bring a few laughs to the occasion. Spoke about the fact that his mother, Dickie, had graced the dance floors there, carrying him as a young child, with her and Philip dancing to Edith Piaf.
He was conjuring up pictures, and he was reflecting on his mother's previous visits, and looking down on him, she would have been very proud of him.
Yes. Well, it was a lovely anecdote. We've seen him now in the first year of his reign undertake 2 really important state visits to Germany and now to Paris, both of which have been incredibly successful.
On this tour, or state occasion, the royal couple took an average of 5 to 7 engagements a day. Is this more than ever before?
It is a lot more than the late Queen would have done.
Really?
It is, yes. The late Queen would have done a lot of set pieces. You've got to remember that this man that we call King Charles III, he was brought up on engagements. He was brought up on duty and doing so many things a day. Queen Camilla wasn't. So she's getting used to the idea, and she did incredibly well to actually face not just Mrs. Macron, but French champion at table tennis. It's quite something.
Plenty more still to come on the Royal Beat collection, but first, here's what else you can watch on True Royalty TV.
Join me, Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen, on The Royal Beat Back in Time as I dive into the history books with expert guests to uncover the scandals and secrets of the monarchy in years gone by. Queen Victoria's relationship with men delves into her close bond with Lord Melbourne and also her tense interactions with William Gladstone. Look back at the spectacular splendour when kings and queens are crowned in the history of coronations. He was the ultimate, and some would say the original royal rock star. Find out more about his dramatic life in The Duke of Monmouth, the Royal Rebel. You can watch all episodes of The Royal Beat Back in Time only on True Royalty, the home of Royal TV.
Welcome back. Now, we've discussed some of the challenges that King Charles faces at home as he moves out of his mother's shadow and into the second year of his own reign. But it isn't just here that he's the monarch here in the UK. He's also the head of the Commonwealth and the king in 14 of the countries that make it up. And Canada is, of course, a Commonwealth country. It's also a country that retains the monarchy. So, Bonnie, let's cross over to you for your perspective on how you would describe the spectrum of feeling towards the king amongst Canadians.
You know, there are days that we love our royals, and then there are days that we don't know what they do. But the thing that did remind people a lot about the importance of the monarchy was the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. It was a global history lesson. People had time to think a little bit, more carefully about perhaps what is this monarchy? What is this symbol? What is this person? And what does it mean to us? But we still do struggle with it. And we have lots of diverse and racial issues in this country. We're full of new Canadians. We've had a lot of immigration in the last 5 or 6 years. So to some extent, we are looking to apologies from the monarchy that we're still waiting for.
This chimes really with a lot of what you've written, Ed, about wanting a more modern approach. I mean, when you think about the work, I know that he visited with the Queen for the Jubilee celebrations, but prior to that, in Barbados, he stood up and he did address some of the sins of fathers past in terms of slavery, and I mean, is that the kind of thing that you think we need to see more of, Ed?
I think provided the relevant governments are supportive of such a, if you like, an acknowledgement, maybe not so much as an apology, but certainly acknowledgement of these past injustices, I think that the king can do much, if you like, to address those sort of open wounds and hopefully, I think, over time, heal those open wounds.
Now, last week saw the royals welcome Japan's Emperor and Empress when they arrived for a UK 3-day state visit. Kate, you were the first to kind of point out to us earlier that there is a long-standing friendship between the Emperor and the King.
That's right. They were young princes and they knew each other from back in the day. So the Japanese emperor, when he was younger, came to study at Oxford from 1983 to 1985 and actually wrote a brilliant memoir, which is a fascinating read, which the Prince of Wales, as was now king, wrote a foreword to. and the Emperor talks about learning how to order a pint of beer in an English pub and going to a welly throwing competition in a village fete and all those kind of typically English things, but seeing it from an outsider's point of view, which is really interesting. And they did fly fishing at Balmoral, and there is a genuine friendship there. There was genuine fondness to see, wasn't there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's talk of that they went on sort of boat tours down the Thames together because the Emperor, when he was studying at Oxford, ended up writing a book about the River Thames that has become one of these
loves a book, doesn't he?
It's become one of these sort
Even
of
his memoirs is called the Thames and I.
Yeah, it's absolutely obsessed with like waterways and this book has become one of these foremost historical artefacts now.
Wow!
And so him and Charles took him down a trip down the Thames back in sort of the late 80s.
So actually, a visit like this is something that he and the Queen would really look forward to, Elsa, because it's the chance to host friends.
Well, it's just interesting. So it's actually lovely to see a state visit where there's a friendship as well as what they have to do constitutionally. The late Queen was obviously known for her thriftiness, and I remember doing a state visit to Oman, and the Sultan of Oman, I don't know whether you came on this one, gifted the Queen a replica of his palace in solid gold. It must have been as big as this room, and a racehorse worth £1 million. And the Queen gave him a Royal Collection book worth $14.99.
You're kidding.
It's the thought that counts.
$1 million racehorse.
And a palace worth £1 million, a model of a palace, yeah.
You're watching the Royal Beat Collection. We'll be back right after this short break. Explore our shows on True Royalty TV, the only on-demand channel devoted to the best documentaries about royalty. They left the royal family for a life in California. Chart the highs and lows of their departure in Harry and Meghan, The Rise and Fall. Find out how the royal family has evolved in the last century and how it will continue to change in the future of the monarchy. Uncover how Princess Catherine was mentored by the late Queen in Kate and the Queen, A Special Relationship. You can get this and more only on True Royalty, the home of Royal TV. You're watching the Royal Beat Collection. On this episode, with President Macron's state visit just days away, we're looking at how King Charles has navigated politics and diplomacy that comes with these international events.
Now, the King and Queen have been in Australia and Samoa this week, embarking on their first international tour since Charles was diagnosed with cancer. We can cross over now to Russell Myers. I mean, it's a tough job, Russell, but someone's got to do it. Thanks for taking one for the team.
My pleasure as always, Kate. So thanks for having me.
Obviously, one of the big moments to come out of it was a point of a real bone of contention. And it got a huge amount of pickup online, Russell. Let's take a look at that moment.
Give us our land back. Give us what you stole from us. Our bones, our skulls, our babies, our people. You destroyed our land. Give us a treaty. We want a treaty in this country. You are a genocide. This is not your land. This is not your land. You are not my kids. You are not our kids.
Well, a hugely powerful moment there that you saw Lydia Thorpe in the Parliament House. She is a senator and she's been quite vocal in her opposition to the royal family. She's called the colonisers before. She got a lot of attention in 2022 when she was inducted into Parliament House as a senator, refusing to take the oath of allegiance to the late Queen, calling her a coloniser in that statement. And what a moment for her. Of course, she felt that she had the right to do that. She was invited as a guest to the event. And Buckingham Palace had discussed this. They decided to invite her along. I mean, it would have been, I think, worse for the royal family and the palace had they kept her out of the event. So they kind of knew that could happen. They invited her with respect. They say that respect wasn't reciprocated.
This woman is known for her views and for her stunts. So they may well have been expecting this. What kind of preparation goes into making sure that their majesties are not prepared for a moment like this?
So they would be prepared. What they wouldn't want it to do is be front and centre of the whole of the tour. And they also wouldn't want the shine to be taken off of that particular event, because you can imagine sort of weeks, months, years of planning, and what they wouldn't want it to be remembered for was just that.
So, Russ, other than this moment of high drama, what have been your highlights of the tour?
Well, you just look at the imagery from Australia. I mean, it's you have to sort of show you're in country. We didn't necessarily get the cuddling of koalas or the kangaroos in the background, but the scene set outside Sydney Opera House with the fly past, 10,000 people is the official number we got from the police on the ground. I mean, that is incredible.
How's he coped with the schedule? Because all eyes have been on not overdoing it.
Well, I mean, the Queen, rather, spoke about him toiling away into the small hours when she was at a women's event. We know he is a workaholic. And the issue with the tour was it was scaled down, certainly in Australia. There were only a smattering of events over those few days. But in Samoa, it was absolutely jam-packed. But I think he's had a good time. He's relished the opportunities to be accepted by these different communities. And so good on him, because it's taken quite a lot to get here.
I mean, we've talked about pacing for King Charles's visit, and I remember this tour to Australia, and the first day we touched down, it was in Canberra, and we said this is going to be a day of rest because it's a long flight. We've got people who are in their twilight years, and I was absolutely shattered. And Prince Philip, the next morning, woke up and said, right, what are we going to do? And I thought, golly, you're in you're 90, I was in my 40s, and I thought, I'm shattered, but you're raring to go. So amazing stamina.
Now in Samoa for the Commonwealth Summit. King Charles presided over discussions surrounding climate change, but that wasn't the only subject that was up for difficult discussion, was it, Wesley?
And rightly, climate change is a big topic because over half the Commonwealth countries are small islands, so rising sea levels is but the past is always present when you're talking about the Commonwealth. Many of the countries were in the British Empire, and a lot of them, say 14 of them in the Caribbean, African countries, they're interested in this issue of reparations.
It's hard for the King, though, isn't it? Because he's only expressed sorrow. He can't say the word sorry because it's not British government policy.
And this is when it becomes political.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
He has to do the bidding of the government, and British government policy is focus on the current and the future, and we're not going to look back to the past.
Lots more still to come on the Royal Beat collection, but first, find out what else you could watch on True Royalty TV.
True Royalty TV is the only on-demand channel devoted to royalty. Join me, Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen, on the Royal Beat Book Club, the series which reviews the best royal books in print. Dive into June Wollerton's book and get bunting ready to discover pomp and pageantry at its finest in our history of royal jubilees. Author Craig Brown presents a different side to Queen Elizabeth in A Voyage Around the Queen. Turn the pages of Tiffany Jenkins' book exploring the history and current state of privacy and how it impacts the monarchy in royal private lives. You can watch all episodes of the Royal Beat Book Club only on True Royalty, the home of Royal TV.
Welcome back to the Royal Beat. Well, it's been a milestone week for the King and Queen as they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary while in Italy for a state visit. It was such a relief, Elsa, and truly joyful to see the King looking so well, because of course I think we were all a little bit worried when he went into hospital, albeit briefly.
He did look happy and joyous and well, and the sun came out for them and the crowds were there, and I thought, what a great start to a state visit.
There were some tweaks to the schedule, not because of the King's cancer treatment, but because the Pope was unwell. But a meeting did happen at the Vatican. How important do you think it would have been for the King for this meeting to have gone ahead?
Oh, really important. I mean, it was a private meeting. We weren't expecting it. We also only got this photo the day after because initially, the media were not actually properly invited in. But it's really important for Charles.
And of course, it happened on a very special day, on the day of their wedding anniversary.
Their 20th wedding anniversary.
Afia, how did they celebrate it?
I mean, a state banquet for a couple of hundred, yes. Right? And why not celebrate in absolute style at this state banquet, in Italy?
How did he get away with the state dinner rather than a romantic candlelit dinner for two, Elsa?
I think it's rather cheapskate of him, isn't that? Not taking his beautiful wife out after 20 years and just gate crashes a state banquet for all these other people. So actually good on him for saving a few pennies.
Let's turn our attention to the King and Queen's recent visit to Canada for the state opening of Parliament and Charles's first as sovereign. Now, Chris, you were there every step of the way. How was it? And an important trip, right?
Really, really important, actually. And I thought it was really quite something for the Canadians to have their king there. What I got from being in Canada was the way in which they feel much more fearful of Donald Trump. We might look over the other side of the Atlantic and go, ha, he wants to make them the 51st state. But you really feel that when you're in Canada. And a lot of people say we've been united through fear. And that was what I took away from it. And the King coming to visit them and to make this speech, they saw that was him giving his support to Canadians at what is a very uncertain time.
It wasn't a speech that he wrote, it was a speech that he delivered, and we should be very clear on that. But where did he break from the script to lend his own thoughts and opinions, Chris?
So unlike in the UK Parliament, where the government writes the whole thing, and it's like, my government will do X, Y and Z, the King had a bit of personal reflection at both the top and the bottom, and talked about how much he loves Canada, and had a little bit of Canada seeps into his heart every time he visits. And I have to say, the King, at one stage, he looked really emotional. He was kind of looking at the sky. You could see the sort of tongue going into his cheek as if he was trying to hold back his emotions. Now, we don't know why he was feeling that emotional, but I think he really does have a deep love of Canada, and being there at what is a very important time and being able to make a speech, an important speech, as he did in the Senate, I think really got to him. He really did feel it.
He also mentioned but a kind of gentle nod towards President Trump. He said, all Canadians can give themselves far more than any foreign power on any continent can ever take away. Quite loaded as a statement, do you think, Sarah?
Yes, except I think this was very carefully balanced and pitched in this speech. And this was a speech in which he mentioned the strength, Canada being strong and free. He talked about its national unity, its sense of pride. But there were also a couple of nods towards Donald Trump that might have appealed as well in this speech, when he was talking about border security, for example, when he was talking about military spending. So I don't think this speech will have caused major offence to Donald Trump, but it certainly will have bolstered Canada's sense of sovereignty.
That's all we've got time for on this episode of the Royal Beat Collection, but do keep the conversation going on socials. Just search True Royalty TV and make sure you listen to the Royal Beat podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for watching. See you next time.